And on to a top story that we are tracking. This is after a video was put out by Russia claiming that Kremlin was attacked by Ukraine earlier this evening. The sensational claim that there was an attack on the life of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Clearly, this is something that Ukraine has since denied, said that it has nothing to do with this particular attack and that it is Russia once again trying to justify a future attack that it may potentially engage in. This is, of course, a sensational twist to the entire saga surrounding the Ukraine war, perhaps the most sensational one that we've heard since the war itself started, sparking fears of whether there could be an escalation in fighting, in violence that will be seen in coming days.
You're watching the News Hour at 9. Debate number 2 on Times Now. Super Prime Time.
All right, for more on this, we're joined by Yury Yakushik, who's chairman of the supervisory board of the Ukrainian Institute of Politics, which is a think tank. We also have with us Sergey Stroganov, journalist and columnist from the Kommersant publishing house in Moscow. Let me start first and foremost with Yury Yakushik. Yury Yakushik, Russia says that this was an assassination attempt on the president. Where does Ukraine stand?
I didn't hear well. The sound is not so strong, but as I think you asked me what is in Ukraine, the reaction to this. Well, reaction is different. Ultra patriots, they're saying, great. Yeah, that's what we should do, attack Kremlin. But when we see that this is an amateurish attack by strange drones, when Russian president was not there, so then we can see that it's not a military operation. It's an operation for the mass media and probably operation in order to provoke a new wave of war. Not everybody in Ukraine is sure that it's the exact time when the new wave of war should be, of escalation, should be taken. But this is the action which puts the new wave of war. Russian radical politicians in the parliament, they're saying, oh, now it's time to attack Kyiv, to kill Ukrainian president. So what's that? There was a tacit agreement
Let me bring
that the Ukrainian president will not be attacked.
Yes, let me just come in here. Let me just come in here and bring the other side as well. Sergey Stroganov is with us. He's a journalist and columnist. Sergey Stroganov, it's an amateurish attempt. It's an attempt which is being made to justify future violence. That's the view coming in from Ukraine. How do you respond to that?
Thanks for having me. Obviously, we were expecting that Ukraine
I request you to unmute yourself and speak, please. Sergey Stroganov.
Do you hear me now? Do you hear me? Shall I go on? Do you hear me now?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Look, let me tell you that we were expecting some attacks from Ukrainian side, and in fact, we are witnessing a number of attacks in border areas of Russia, specifically in Kursk region, in Belgorod region. For many months, we are witnessing those attacks. However, we couldn't have expected that Ukraine would take a risk to attack Kremlin, which is the very heart of Russia, which is the symbol of Russia, and which is the place where President Putin works. Obviously, Ukraine now denies this and saying that this is all falsified, that this is all stage managed, that this is all Russian propaganda. Then in such a situation, when you have two confusing theories, Russia's interpretation and Ukrainian interpretation, then you have to decide whom you are going to trust. But to unwrap this riddle, you have to ask yourself a simple question. If Russia was trying to look for a pretext for attack for Russia, why it didn't do it earlier? And the second thing is that if you look at how this conflict was evolving from the very start of the February last year, you will see that already Russia had 1,001 reason to attack Kyiv, and it was not done. For example, Ukraine attacked the Crimea Bridge, and during that time, believe me, I am communicating with political pundits, with MPs, and the dominant mood already last September was that we have to attack Kyiv, and it was not done. So this argument that Russia is looking for a pretext is very weak on substance. This is my message, and my message.
Okay, Valentin Yakushik, let me get in a response on that point. There were plenty of opportunities to attack Kyiv that did not happen, and certainly this is not an excuse that is required now at this point of time to in any way bring about any kind of violence in Kyiv. That's the response coming in from Russia. Your response, Mr. Yakushik?
Well, this is a very specific war between Russia and Ukraine in two aspects. One, it's special because there is business as usual as to transit of gas and oil. So there are some international business interests behind that. Another, it's the war between the most closest nations. It's like Kurukshetra in the battle in the history of India, when the nearest relatives are fighting with each other. So it was not easy for majority of Russian soldiers, generals, and the leaders to attack Ukrainian cities. But what was done during the last year? First, there were specially done actions of burglaries, of destroying properties, of seizing properties. So someone from inside the Russian army, the Russian state machinery was trying to make out of Ukrainians enemies. So now every day we hear as they are counting, oh, this day 500, 600, 700 Ukrainians each day were killed. Can it keep the nations being brotherly and close? So somebody inside the Russian machine is working in order to create Ukrainians as enemies. Well, the same forces are within Ukraine.
I want Sergey to respond to that. Sergey, someone inside Russia is working to create an enemy. The larger question that everyone wants to know the answer of is what will happen from here on, Sergey?
Yeah, and the same are even stronger forces outside Russia and Ukraine who would like us to fight as long as possible. So what is the end? Either we will come to a conclusion that the war which we have now, it's a tragedy, both for Ukraine and for Russia. And we have to find a way how to create a unified Ukraine coming back of the territories which are occupied by Russia to Ukraine and having Ukraine.
I want Sergey to come in. Sergey, what can we expect from here on?
Yeah, look, listening to my Ukrainian colleague, I'm just wondering how all this long story about oil and other things are related to this attack on Kremlin. This is another riddle, actually, but probably your esteemed anchorman and your audience would be able to understand, to find some logic in this explanation. However, the main question is what comes ahead. Because now in Russia, we have plenty of hoaxes, you know, as I told you, I would be frank with you, who were saying stories that why not attacking Ukraine for many months. Obviously now this would generate more sentiment that we have to take some strong action, but we have to understand one thing, that it is not political pundits or MPs or even head of parliament who are taking the decision. The decision rests with Russia's president and commander-in-chief. He would have to come up with some response. Probably we will see another news breaking stories, but I'm sure that whatever action is taken, it would be rational action, it would be not crazy action, it would be not an act of despair or revenge or whatever it is, and it would ideally fit Russia's national interests. But let us see how things stand. I think we will see the follow-up.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. All eyes on what will happen. We certainly hope for peace. And certainly, as Indian Prime Minister Modi has said, that now is not a time for war. Will there be restraint shown on Russia's part, maturity shown on Ukraine's part as well, to not escalate the issue beyond where we've already reached? That's a very, very big question at this point of time, because we've already seen how much the entire world has suffered. Although perhaps it's only been economically, one can only imagine the pain and suffering that Russians and Ukrainians who've lost hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of lives, huge amount of destruction to families and property. We certainly hope that it all remains as peaceful as can possibly get. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us this evening. We're moving on to story number 3 that we're covering on the News Hour.